Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bhakti Fundamentals. Today we answer the question, what's in a name? And in this case, we are looking at the personal name of the Supreme Himself, Krishna. Now, the line, what's in a name, actually derives from the play Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. And for some context surrounding the line, when it is spoken by Juliet, she is suggesting that names themselves do not inherently affect the essence or value of something. She says, what's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. In her case, she is saying that Romeo's last name of Montague doesn't change who he is as a person or her love for him. She loves the person who happens to wear the Montague label. The idea behind her line is that the label or title we assign to things or people is external. What matters is the substance, not the name so much. The phrase, what's in a name, is therefore often used in modern contexts to emphasize that names, titles, or labels don't ultimately define the true nature or worth of someone. Now, it's certainly the case that material labels or names do not ultimately define us. Remember how in our talks on the nature of the self, we learned that we are not actually these material bodies, but rather individual souls or jivas in Sanskrit. Thus, we are not ultimately defined by the external labels that we sometimes use to describe ourselves, labels like human, student, woman, athlete, doctor, etc. Some of those labels change within this very lifetime, and they certainly change from one lifetime to the next. However, what does not change is our core identity, who and what we actually are, eternal individual souls. We are unique persons, and only our outer material appearance changes from lifetime to lifetime, and even within this lifetime. At the time of death for our bodies, we leave our current material body and enter another body, if our destination is in the material world. However, spirit functions differently from matter. One significant point for us to understand is that Krishna's name is transcendental. It is absolute, fully spiritual, and it is considered to be non-different from him. When we speak Krishna's name, he is present in his name immediately. So when we ask the question, what's in the name Krishna? A lot, in fact, everything. The Supreme Lord himself is present in his name. His name is therefore extremely valuable and powerful. And even materially, names do hold meaning for us, right? For instance, we take great care in choosing names for our children and our pets. And once we have named them, we call our children and pets by their names. So why not do the same for God? Of course, many people refer to the Supreme Absolute Truth or the Lord as God. God is a generic term, a title, if you will, for the Supreme. However, think of how much more personal it is if we refer to Krishna by his name. If we think about it, we don't refer to our dogs as dog when speaking to them. We don't say, hey dog, come here. We say, hey Skip, come here. And the same goes for our children or our friends. We interact with them personally by calling them by their names. And if we hear someone mention the name of a friend or family member, we immediately remember the person to whom the name refers. Similarly, referring to Krishna by name will help us to remember him and on a personal level. If we think about it, the term God is not a name. It's more of a job description for Krishna. It denotes Krishna's job description of being the end-all, be-all, the supreme creator, sustainer, and controller of the universe. The term God evokes awe and reverence and creates distance between us and the Supreme because it conjures the more nebulous image of an all-powerful, all-knowing, and omnipresent figure. God is an impersonal term by which to refer to the Supreme. Referring to the Supreme as God is almost like referring to a friend by their job description instead of by their nickname. In the Bhagavad Gita, we hear Arjuna refer to Krishna by different personal names, like Madhava and Madhusudana. And we learn that the Supreme has many names, and they are all personal. In fact, they all correspond to different pastimes or activities that Krishna performs with his devotees, with his bhaktas, those who intimately love and serve him. And the name Krishna is the name used by Krishna's most intimate devotees, those who have the closest and most personal relationship with him. The name Krishna, which means all attractive in Sanskrit, emphasizes the personal and loving nature of the Supreme. Rather than evoking awe and reverence for him, Krishna's name invites us to have a personal relationship with him, to know and love him on a personal level, on a first-name basis, if you will. And our use of Krishna's name in Bhakti Yoga reflects the central theme of bhakti, wherein we seek to cultivate a loving personal relationship with Krishna. In fact, we already have a very personal relationship with the Supreme. We just need to uncover it. And Bhakti Yoga, particularly the process of chanting the Maha Mantra, which is comprised of the names of the Supreme, helps us to uncover that already existing, deeply personal relationship that we have with Krishna. The ultimate goal in Bhakti Yoga is not just to recognize Krishna as the Supreme Being and to say that we believe in him, but rather to have a loving relationship with Krishna, to love him personally, fully, and without any reservation. In Bhakti Yoga, Krishna is seen not just as a powerful creator or controller, but as the ultimate repose of our love, and he perfectly reciprocates that love with us. By contrast, the impersonal term of God focuses more on Krishna's cosmic functions as creator, rather than on his personal loving nature. In Bhakti, we like to be constantly reminded of our personal relationship with Krishna. And referring to Krishna by his name helps us to always remember that personal relationship that we already have with him. Ultimately, Krishna is not a name for God. Rather, God is a name or title for Krishna when we don't know his personal name. Once we do know his personal name, it behooves us to try to start referring to Krishna by that name, as that will help us to relate to him personally. And the benefits of chanting the names of the Supreme cannot be measured or calculated because Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. His names are also absolute truth. And as such, they are extremely purifying, and chanting them actually removes our material conditioning. Our material conditioning is that which leads us to believe that we are our material bodies or minds. By contrast, chanting the transcendental, spiritual names of the Supreme conditions us spiritually, meaning that chanting helps us remember that we are eternal spiritual beings, we can never actually die, and that we have an eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Person, Krishna, who is our source and the source of all that be. So to conclude, what's in a name? Materially, a name or physical label is not the end-all be-all. The external labels or titles we often use to describe ourselves do not define our essence. But when it comes to Krishna, the Supreme, his name is his essence. His name is absolute, fully spiritual. It is non-different from him. We are in his direct presence when we chant Krishna's name, and the more we chant his name, the more we will feel his presence in our lives. And this is one of the many reasons we chant the Maha Mantra, which is comprised of his names. Maha is a word meaning great. And the word mantra means that which frees or delivers the mind. A mantra is meant to free our minds from matter, from our material conditioning, which leads us to believe that we are matter, that we are our bodies or minds, when in reality we are pure spirit. And the Maha Mantra is considered great because of its effectiveness in elevating our consciousness from material to spiritual, in reminding us of our eternal personal relationship with Krishna. It is therefore considered the great mantra for deliverance from this material world of suffering in which we currently find ourselves. And the three words comprising the mantra are Hare, Krishna, and Rama, which are all names of the Supreme. The word Krishna means all attractive. The Supreme attracts everyone, ultimately. The word Hare refers to the transcendental energy of the Supreme, and the word Rama refers to the bliss that is associated with the Supreme, and that we feel even when chanting his names. What does the mantra mean? Well, the meaning is really so beautiful. Since these are all names of the Supreme, that is why they are purifying, because the Supreme is completely pure. When an iron rod is placed in fire, what happens? The rod itself becomes hot. It starts taking on the qualities of the fire. Similarly, when we chant Krishna's pure names, we become purified. And altogether, in this particular combination, the Maha Mantra is a petition to have the shelter of the Supreme spiritual energy. We find ourselves presently in an unreliable and always changing material world, but the Maha Mantra gives us the shelter of the spiritual energy of the Supreme, which is stable and transcendental to this material world. Thus, it provides us with spiritual strength for navigating this material world. On screen are some teachings on the name of Krishna and on the importance of chanting Krishna's names, and they come from Shastra, from the Bhakti scriptures. They just reiterate some of the points that we've been going over today. The first one says, since Krishna and his holy name are identical, the holy name is eternally pure and beyond material contamination. It is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a transcendental vibration. Now that's pretty amazing, isn't it? The name of Krishna is the Supreme Himself manifesting in sound, sacred sound. The second point reads, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one immediately concentrates on the sound vibration and thinks of the Lord, and very quickly one is elevated to the position of samadhi or trance. If one goes on chanting the holy names of the Lord, which are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally his mind becomes absorbed in thought of the Lord. So this one reiterates how chanting focuses our minds on Krishna, on the Supreme. Otherwise, throughout the day, our minds are focusing on so many different things, right? But the mantra powerfully directs our minds to focus on Krishna. And finally, this third one is from a class that Srila Prabhupada gave on a section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He gave the class in 1973. And he said, we are teaching Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam as it is spoken by the authorities. We don't add anything or subtract anything. Krishna says, Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru. This is the process, man mana. You always think of me. This is Krishna's instruction to Arjuna in the Gita. And Srila Prabhupada continues and says, and we say, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If you chant somebody's name, your friend's name or your relatives, immediately remember the person. So the chanting process means to always think of Krishna 24 hours. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises, Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Always chant the holy name of the Lord. And what is the benefit? The benefit is because Krishna is the Supreme Pure, you become purified. So these three excerpts are just three of many examples we could have given from Scripture or classes given by Srila Prabhupada. But they summarized what we spoke about today and serve as a reminder for why we chant the names of Krishna in Bhakti Yoga. Now, that's all we have for today on the topic of what's in a name, Krishna's name. Please let us know of any questions you might have on today's subject matter. Your questions really drive our classes, so we look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, thank you for listening today, and we'll see you next time on Bhakti Fundamentals.